Half the manipulation tactics you've seen online aren't real psychology. Some are backed by decades of peer-reviewed research. Some are internet slang wearing a lab coat. Today, I'm showing you exactly which is which, so the next time a manipulation tactic video hits 1 million views, you'll know if it's science or just a good story. Today, we are sorting through 35 of these terms, sorted by the actual evidence behind them. By the end of this video, you will know 3 things. Which of these terms come from real, citable research, which terms therapists genuinely used but were never pinned to a single study, and which terms are pure internet-era pop psychology with nothing underneath. Welcome back to the Psychology Notebook. This video is part of our Psychology Terminology series, where we define important terms, look at how they show up in real life, and separate the actual psychology from the language we see online. If you want more resources for your own learning journey, or if you're an educator looking for materials that you can use, visit thepsychologynotebook.com. You will find resources, edible teaching materials, and fun accessories for your psychology notebook. You can also check the products attached to this video for a quick look at the resources that go along with this video. For this video, we have 35 terms divided into 3 groups. The first group includes psychology terms with clear academic roots. Second is the clinical and applied concepts that need a little bit more context. And the third group includes popular labels and psychology terms that are common online but are not standard diagnosis. All right, let's get into it. Section 1, terms with clear academic roots. Let's begin with 13 terms that have clear roots in psychological theory or research. These are not all manipulation tactics by themselves. Some are normal psychology processes that another person can take advantage of. And the first term is cognitive dissonance. 1. Cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance is the mental discomfort you feel when your beliefs and actions do not match. So for example, let's say you're in a relationship. Deep down, you know the relationship is hurting you, but you have told yourself and maybe everyone around you that you are happy. Admitting the truth would be painful, so you focus on the good days, excuse the bad ones, and convince yourself that maybe it is not that serious. That uncomfortable gap between what you know and what you are doing is cognitive dissonance. 2. DARVO. Next, we have DARVO. DARVO stands for deny, attack, and reverse victim and offender. Here's what that might look like. You confront someone about something they did. First, they deny it. Then they attack your credibility. And before you know it, they are presenting themselves as the person who was harmed. Research suggests this can make outside observers view the actual victim as less believable. You walk in asking for accountability, and somehow you walk out apologizing. 3. Moral licensing. Number 3 is moral licensing. This happens when someone treats a previously good action like permission for a later bad one. Let's say they were generous all week, but today they said something cruel. Instead of taking responsibility, they remind you of everything good that they have done. You may hear, "After everything I do for you." The good behavior becomes a kind of credit that they believe that they can spend later. 4. Groupthink. Now let's move from individual behavior to group behavior. Groupthink happens when a close group values agreement more than honest evaluation. Imagine a friend group where everyone quietly excuses one person's behavior. Several people may feel uncomfortable, but nobody wants to be the first to say, "This is not okay." So keeping the peace becomes more important than addressing the problem. 5. Obedience to authority. Number 5 is obedience to authority. This is the pressure we can feel to follow someone who appears to have legitimate power, even when their instructions conflict with our judgment. You may know something feels wrong, but the person has a title, a uniform, or some other sign of authority. Milgram's experiments showed how far people could be pushed when an authority figure calmly continued telling them to proceed. 6. Conformity. Conformity is related, but this time the pressure comes from the group. It means changing what you say or do to match the people around you, even when you privately believe they are wrong. For example, everyone seems convinced that a certain person is wonderful. Something feels off to you, but no one else is saying it. so you stay quiet. Ash's research showed how strongly that kind of social pressure can affect our answers. 7. Door in the face. Next is the door in the face technique. This begins with a very large request. Let's say someone asks you for something completely unreasonable and you say no. Then they make a smaller request. The second request may still be unfair, but compared with the first one, it suddenly feels reasonable. The smaller request may have been what they wanted all along. 8. Foot in the door. The foot in the door technique works in the opposite direction. Instead of starting big, the person starts with something small. You agree to one little favor, then they ask for something slightly bigger. Because you already said yes once, the second request feels like a natural next step. And before long, one small favor has become a pattern of larger requests. 9. Sunk cost fallacy. Number 9 is the sunk cost fallacy. This happens when you keep investing in something because of what you already put into it, instead of asking whether it is still worth continuing. For an example, let's use a relationship again. You may not be staying because the relationship is healthy now. You may be staying because you have already given it 5 years, a lot of energy, and a lot of hope. 10. Traumatic bonding. Number 10 is traumatic bonding. You will often hear this called trauma bonding online, but the original term was traumatic bonding. It describes a powerful attachment that can develop in an abusive relationship with a power imbalance and an unpredictable cycle of mistreatment followed by kindness or relief. The caring version of the person returns, and that moment of relief can strengthen the attachment even though the relationship is still harmful. This is different from two people simply bonding over a difficult experience. 11. Chameleon effect. Next is the chameleon effect. This is our natural tendency to unconsciously mirror another person's posture, expressions, or mannerisms. For example, you may cross your legs after they cross theirs without even noticing it. Now, someone can also imitate you on purpose. They may suddenly love everything you love because they want to create a quick sense of closeness. But that deliberate behavior is different from the unconscious effect studied in the original research. 12. Thought-terminating cliches. Number 12 is a thought-terminating cliche. This is a short phrase that stops a question before anyone has to seriously examine it. For example, you bring up a real concern and the response is, "You are overthinking this." Or maybe you hear, "It is what it is." Those phrases sound like answers, but they do not address the core concern. They simply end the conversation. 13. Limerence. The final term in this section is limerence. Limerence is an intense and involuntary form of infatuation. You may think about the person constantly, analyze every message, and feel an overwhelming need for them to return your feelings. Because the emotional high is so powerful, you may overlook red flags that you would normally recognize. Limerence can feel like love, but it is not the same as a stable and mutual relationship. Alright, those first 13 terms have clear academic roots. Now we are moving into a slightly different group. These next concepts come from clinical psychology, psychoanalytical psychology, family systems, neuropsychology, and other applied fields. They are still useful, but some of them are used much more loosely online than they are in psychology. Section 2. Clinical and Applied Concepts. 14. Gaslighting. Let's start this section with a term almost everyone has heard, gaslighting. Gaslighting is a repeated pattern of denying or distorting someone's reality until they begin to doubt their own memory or judgment. Let's say you clearly remember what was said during an argument. The other person insists it never happened. They repeat their version until you start wondering whether you remembered it incorrectly. But that pattern matters. Two people remembering one conversation differently is not automatically gaslighting. 15. Projection. The next term is projection. Projection happens when someone places their own uncomfortable feelings, motives, or traits onto another person. For example, let's say someone is being dishonest. Instead of dealing with their own behavior, they become unusually focused on accusing everyone else of lying. But an accusation by itself does not prove projection. You still need evidence of the larger pattern. 16. Rationalization. Number 16 is rationalization. This happens when someone creates a reasonable sounding explanation for a choice or motive that may be harder to admit. You might hear, "I only did it because you made me." That sounds like an explanation, but it also moves responsibility away from the person who made the choice. Rationalization can make an unreasonable action sound much more logical than it really was. 17. Minimization. Closely related to that is minimization. Minimization means making real harm sound smaller or less serious than it actually was. Let's say you explain that something hurt you. Instead of addressing what happened, the person says, "It was not that big of a deal." Now, the conversation is no longer about their behavior. It has become an argument about whether you are allowed to feel hurt. 18. Denial. The next term is denial. Denial means refusing to acknowledge a reality that feels too uncomfortable or costly to accept. Let's say you bring evidence and expect an explanation. Instead, you get a flat response. "That never happened." Sometimes denial is deliberate. Other times, it can work as an unconscious defense. That is why we still have to consider the context. 19. Scapegoating. Number 19 is scapegoating. Scapegoating happens when the blame for a larger problem is repeatedly placed on one person. Imagine a family with several unresolved issues. Instead of looking at the entire family pattern, everyone points to one person and says, "This is all happening because of you." That person becomes the problem, which means nobody else has to examine their own role. 20. Enabling. Next, we have enabling. Enabling means protecting someone from the consequences of their behavior in a way that allows the pattern to continue. And this can be confusing because it often begins at the attempt to help. Let's say you repeatedly cover for someone, make excuses, or fix every problem their behavior creates. If they never experience any consequences, they have very little reason to change. 21 is isolation tactics. This is the gradual process of separating someone from friends, family, finances, work, or other support. It may begin quietly. One friend is called a bad influence. A family member is accused of interfering. Every visit causes an argument. Little by little, the support system becomes smaller, and the person becomes more dependent on the one isolating them. 22. Triangulation. Next is triangulation. Triangulation happens when a third person is pulled into tension between two people. Let's say you and someone else are having a problem. Instead of speaking directly with you, they go to someone else. They may ask that person to take a side, carry a message, or agree with them about you. Now, a two-person problem has become a three-person problem. 23. Stonewalling. Number 23 is stonewalling. Stonewalling means withdrawing from a conversation and shutting down communication. You may be discussing something important when the other person stops responding. No answer, no engagement, nothing. But it is not always calculated manipulation. Some people shut down because they feel overwhelmed. The question is whether they return to repair the conversation or repeatedly use silence to punish, control, or avoid accountability. 24. Confabulation. The next term is confabulation, and this one needs an important clarification. Confabulation means producing a false or distorted memory without consciously intending to lie. The memory feels real to the person, so they may describe it with complete confidence. But confabulation is usually connected to problems with memory or brain function. It should not be used as a casual label because two people remember an ordinary argument differently. 25. Word salad. The last term in this section is word salad. In clinical psychiatry, word salad refers to severely disorganized speech without a clear, understandable connection. Online, people use this phrase more loosely. You ask one direct question, you get 5 confusing or unrelated answers. Eventually, you forget what you originally asked. That may be a frustrating conversation, but it is not necessarily the same as the clinical symptom. So far, we have covered 13 terms with academic roots and 12 concepts from clinical or applied psychology. Now we are moving into the final group. These last 10 labels are especially popular online. The behaviors may be real and the words may be useful, but these are not standardized diagnosis, and the labels can sound more certain than the evidence allows. Section 3. Popular labels and internet shorthand. 26. Future faking. Let's begin this section with future faking. Future faking means making elaborate promises about a shared future to keep someone emotionally invested without taking meaningful steps toward that future. Let's say you hear a lot of wedding talk, house talk, even baby name talk. The future sounds detailed, but nothing ever moves beyond the conversation. Now, one plan falling through is not future faking. Look for a repeated pattern of grand promises with very little follow-through. 27. Breadcrumbing. Next is breadcrumbing. Breadcrumbing means giving someone just enough attention to keep them interested, but not enough to build a stable relationship. Maybe you get one message every few weeks. Just when you're ready to move on, they check in again. It is enough attention to keep you wondering, but never enough for you to rely on. 28. Hoovering. Number 28 is hoovering. The name comes from the Hoover vacuum because it describes an attempt to pull someone back into a relationship after they had stepped away. Let's say there have been months of silence. Then, just as you begin to move forward, a message appears. It may include an apology, a memory, or exactly the words you once wanted to hear. The purpose is to draw you back into contact. 29. Orbiting. Next is orbiting. Orbiting happens when someone ends direct communication but continues to stay visible in your digital life. They do not answer your messages, but they still like your posts, watch your stories, and quietly follow everything you do online. They may have left the relationship, but they have not completely left your orbit. 30. Fog, or FOG. Number 30 is fog, which stands for fear, obligation, or guilt. This describes emotional pressure that can keep someone compliant. Let's say you want to say no, set a boundary, or leave. But you fear the reaction. You feel as though you owe the person. Then you feel guilty for wanting something different. That mixture can make it very difficult to act on what you actually want. 31. Idolize, devalue, discard. Next is the idolize, devalue, and discard pattern. It begins with intense praise. You are placed on a pedestal and treated as if you can do no wrong. Then the praise shifts into criticism. Finally, the relationship may end abruptly, or the person may move on to someone new. This label is often connected to personality disorders online, but the pattern by itself cannot diagnose a person or a condition. 32. Weaponized incompetence. Number 32 is weaponized incompetence. This means repeatedly doing a task poorly or claiming not to know how to do it so that someone else eventually takes over. Let's say you ask someone to do the dishes. They do such a careless job that you have to wash everything again. After this happens several times, you stop asking and simply do it yourself. 33. Negging. Next is negging. Negging is a backhanded compliment intended to lower someone's confidence and make them want more approval. For example, someone says, "You're actually really attractive for a person who does not try very hard." At first, it may sound like a compliment. There is an insult sitting right in the middle of it. That is the point. 34. Blame shifting. Number 34 is blame shifting. This means redirecting responsibility away from yourself and placing it onto someone else. Let's say you try to talk to someone about what they did. Instead of addressing their behavior, they focus on what you supposedly did to cause it. Now you are defending yourself, and their original behavior has disappeared from the conversation. 35. Love bombing. And the final term is love bombing. Love bombing is an intense flood of affection, attention, praise, gifts, or promises used to create rapid trust and emotional dependence. Let's say you have known someone for 2 weeks and they are already talking about forever. At first, the intensity can feel magical, but later that affection may turn into pressure, control, or sudden withdrawal. Now, intense affection alone does not prove love bombing, so pay attention to what happens when you set a boundary or ask to slow things down. All right, you did great. That is all 35 terms. We covered 13 terms with clear academic roots, 12 clinical and applied concepts, and 10 popular labels that need a little more careful interpretation. And I think the biggest takeaway is this: knowing a psychological term does not automatically tell you what is happening in someone else's mind. But knowing where the term came from can help you use it more carefully. It can help you recognize the difference between an established psychological concept, a useful clinical description, and a popular label that may be getting stretched too far online. Don't forget, you can visit thepsychologynotebook.com for freebies, study resources, editable materials, and fun accessories for your psychology notebook. And if you want to continue with this terminology series, I have a lot more planned, so subscribe to the Psychology Notebook so you don't miss the next one. Thank you for learning with me, and according to YouTube, this video is perfect for you on your learning journey. Click it, and I'll see you over there.